dead between the past and the future. And there is a perceived, if not real, disparity in the way some of the decisions are made. And I want to know how each of you would deal with this. You have homes that have been here for 12 years and have become more vulnerable to the look of wear and tear. The people in Condo 1 and Condo 2 are saying visitors are commenting on the cracks in the stoops and the disintegrating driveways, and the fact that the berms, forget mulch, there's 12 years worth of erosion, and all you see are tree trunks, tree roots. At the same time, they see enhancements being made to current landscaping. And I love this community. I have friends all over it, and I would hate to see a kind of little tiff going on between one and the other.
Jane, could you ask a question, please?
So the question is, how would you each approach the balance between enhancing and going back and maintaining stuff that's 12 years old and looks worn?
Thank you.
A lot of that comes through the committees, with the A&A committee, with Karen, and the construction committee. And you take the, it's balancing what the recommendations are from the committees in a lot of cases, and seeing what's appropriate from the budget committee, and you go forward, which are your priorities.
You know, I want to stress that we all bought into a community. We have different types of units that have different types of requirements. But if we let one part of our community falter, it takes the whole community down. And my issue, I'll go back to that sewage treatment plant. I've heard stories that, you know, well, I'm in a villa, it'll only cost me another $27 and then a year. And I'm hearing, well, I'm in an apartment, it's going to cost me $300 more a year. And I'm saying that's the wrong discussion. It's going to cost the Greens $250,000 a year. You have to look at the community. We can't let one part of the community falter at the expense of another part, because one part will drag the whole community down. It's true, we have older units that are 12 years old and newer units that are only 11 years old. Or 10 years old, but they're all old. They're all going to need work at some point. And the way expenses are distributed amongst the community, approximately 49, 50% of the expenses in the entire community are borne by villas, approximately 25% by condos, and the remaining percentage by the quads. And that's what we accepted. We bought into that, that arrangement, and I think it works. I think it's fair, and we accepted it, and we move on. So if an old villa needs work today, well, I mean, the HOA is responsible for the roof, has to take the repairs. If tomorrow it's something in the condos, well, the HOA has to make the repairs, and we shouldn't think of it as individual units, but as a community.
Frank Postiglione. Yeah, that's the common feeling, is that we live in a condominium area, and we must take care of all problems that arise. And I'm sure the board in the future will find solutions for to take care of this to everyone's approval.
Yes, I agree with Bob and Frank. The uppermost thing is that we should keep our community beautiful and keep the values of the homes up. And we can only do that, obviously, within the amount of money that we can spend. Unless we give a tremendous assessment, then we could do more. We're trying to avoid that and try to do it with the monies that come in each month.
Herb Schoenfeld. One, we have a site manager who works for a property manager. So our property manager is our main source with the site manager telling us what's going wrong in the community. We also have an A&A committee that's out every day looking at the community. We have a construction committee led by Joe Perry, and we have about 20 people on that committee constantly doing things. That's how the decision is made. The board can't sit here unless we come up with something that we see ourselves and say, this is an emergency, we'll take care of it. But the point is, we go through that process, and when it gets to the board and through the condo offices and the condo boards, they're very active in this, helping us as well. We get all this done. I mean, that's how it has to work. It has to go through a system. We just can't pick and choose and say, because you lived here longer, you go first. It's just not going to work. We have to deal with the emergencies. Same way we did it with the apartments. We had to fix, if we didn't fix the alleys and gutters, they would have tremendous floods all winter, and freezing and ice, and we had to do that because it just wasn't working what the builder put in, so that had to be done. So that's where we go. We go where it has to be done first. We're working on the roofs, we're working on the driveways, and we're trying to get everything done as quickly as possible.
Thanks, sir. Number 20. Okay. 21.
Thank you. First, may I make a suggestion? People were asked up there to recite your name before you speak. Very few have done it. My suggestion might be to put a nameplate in front of each person when you first sit down at the table. Then we can know who everybody is without them having to tell us. Okay. Question for all the board members. Recently got a letter from the president of the HOA regarding the fire doors between the garages and homes, and for the apartments between the utility room and the laundry room, that in many cases they are not up to regulations. It also states in there that the repair of these or replacement of these is not the HOA's responsibility, it's the individual homeowners. My question is this for all of you. First of all, I don't know whether my door is a 45-minute door or a 20-minute door or whatever. Is there any way of telling what kind of door you have? Number two, has anybody in the HOA or committees done a survey to find out how many people do have a proper door and how many do not? Third of all, and I'm not a lawyer and I don't know how this works, but if these didn't make the regulations or come up to code when it was initially built and put in, is not that the responsibility of whoever inspected it or the builder or the town? That I'd like, and why should it be the responsibility of the individual homeowners, which could be $800 to $1,500 for a door, and most of the units here, the villas and the townhouses all have at least 2 of these fire doors. Why should it fall to us? And it isn't basically their responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. I'd like to know from each of you, if you would, what have you done for your neighbors, while you're living here, for as long as you've been living here? What have you done for your neighbors to assist them in any individual way? I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
Jerry, I love you, Jerry. I guess I'll try to remember the questions, but one, I can't talk about the lawsuit because we have some kind of a lawsuit going on with the fire doors, and I can't discuss that. So that's a problem. 2, the reason that it's your responsibility because the doors are in your house. That's it, it's your responsibility. Wait, the doors are in your garage, they're yours. Now, what we're trying to do as a board, we're trying to find out if we can get somebody to come in and find out what a right price is and do that. But right now, you have to remember there's statutes of limitations here, there's warranties. We have to find out who's responsible. And just to go around and saying, let's go sue somebody, we have to find somebody to sue. So the truth is we're following the trail to see what we can. But we wanted to get the letter out because there is a safety issue. All of the apartments are good. You do not have a problem. It's the villas and the quads. And if you have a basement, you have a bigger problem. But the thing is, that's what it is. It's your responsibility. It's in your house. And the warranty is probably gone, and we have to figure out another way what to do. We have to speak to the town as well. We have to find out exactly what went on.
Jack Solomons. I'm the one that started the fire door business. I go back to when William Weber was our attorney prior to Richard Hamburger. It was William Weber who started a Supreme Court action on the fire doors. I was the one that called in the Melville Fire Department to check out my doors at my Medici. I have a letter from them that states they are not fire doors. I hired two engineering companies at my own expense. We have those reports. There also are numbers on top of all of the doors in the townhouses and the villas. I went around and gathered quite a few, along with some of the other residents that are here tonight. I sent them to the Geldwin Corporation in Klamath Falls, Oregon, who made the doors. They wrote back, and we have in their communication that they are only 20-minute doors because that's what Mr. Kaplan ordered, 20-minute doors. I organized I made 100 phone calls. I got another company called Accent Architect because Mr. Hamburger wanted us to make sure that these doors are not fire doors, and I assure you they are not, because I was also in touch with the New York State Uniform Fire Code people in Hauppauge, and they have the town signed into that code, New York State Code, in 1967, which called for 45-minute doors, and when the Greens were built in 2002, that was still in effect. I have in my possession right now about 4 estimates on fire doors that range anywhere from one fire door, $1,700, and you have to cart it away, to Home Depot, who charges $661 per fire door. That would be a 90-minute door, not a 45-minute door. I don't know why our lawyer has pulled the trigger and started this lawsuit in Supreme Court.
Thank you, Jack.
Frank Castiglione. Jack started this issue a long time ago, and there's been a lot of research done on it. There are numbers on exactly how many doors are not the proper ones. And however, this is a legal issue now, and it really cannot be discussed openly as where it presently is. Was there another part to the question? There's something about what we did for our neighbors, is that? Okay. Well, the area that I'm in, being an officer, I've maintained fees with nominal increases for a number of years now. We hold an annual barbecue in order to improve community relations in our area. And currently I'm negotiating with the town and the county officials regarding certain rulings that apply to us. So I've been very active in that area. Thank you.
Hey, Bob Resch. I discussed the fire doors in this document that I put together, and it was left outside for you folks to pick up. I could speak about it, but I want to read it because so that you know that this is a position I've already taken. Fire door violations have been officially confirmed by the board. Confirmation is needed to establish the extent to which existing doors will need to be replaced. There is general agreement that doors between garage and unit interiors will need to be upgraded. It is not clear, and that's per state law, it is not clear to me anyway, that interior doors at water heaters and inside boiler rooms will need to be replaced. That has to be confirmed. Several residents, and this is crucial, several residents have checked, including myself, several residents have checked with their insurance brokers to confirm that coverage will not be compromised since the town of Huntington issued certificates of occupancy for each of our units. However, in the worst case scenario, a fire spreads from garage to the interior, causing loss of property and even worse, loss of life. Major financial damages will occur. Though indication is that insurance companies will still cover the residents, they may seek remuneration. The insurance companies may seek remuneration from the parties at fault for the code violation. The parties are the sponsor and the town of Huntington. The cost of curing this code violation the cost of curing this code violation is minor compared to the cost of one major incident. We should explore the possibility of a cost-sharing strategy between the town, the sponsor, and the HOA, rather than go to court for the next 10 years and spend fortunate dollars. Now, it begs the question, how can the town contribute, a third? The answer is through tax abatement.
The problem seems to be mostly in the townhouses and villas. The apartments seem to have appropriate fire doors. But you have to understand that it's not just the door itself, there's the assemblage as well. The door has to be have a spring return. There were some apartments that didn't have that. But to go back, it's a safety issue as well. The most important thing is the smoke alarm, smoke detector, and that everyone should have a functional smoke detector. That's going to be your primary source of having any problem occur.
Is that it?
Oh, as far as helping neighbors, planting flowers, shoveling snow, helping them with their garbage and groceries.
I missed answering the second question. Well, I put a lot of time on the sewage treatment plant committee. I would say weeks and weeks of inspections and communications. Oh, I just want to say my wife, though, is the director of the Mahjong and Canasta Committee for our area, and she spends a lot of time.
Okay, Bob. Number 22. It's answered, thank you. Number 23. I'm sorry. Which question? All right, I'll give you an opportunity, okay? Let me get through the question. Number 23. 24. Somebody have bingo? 25.
Paul DePietro, Condo 4. In lieu of our legal course over the many years, okay, it's come to my attention that there is a lot of frivolous calling Mr. Hamburger, etc., and using them for advice when good, intelligent, common sense might do to try and reduce the legal costs of some millions of dollars, $600,000 in the current budget. What is the new board, going to do in the future about trying to stem the additional costs that keep mounting, even though we do have many legal issues? Frivolous costs, hurt the community, obviously.
Steve?
I agree with Bob that we are at a stage in the negotiations where, in the lawsuits, where I think negotiations are going to be becoming more significant. And hopefully in the future, I really think legal expenses will be going down. From what I've observed is that because of the disputes in the board, unfortunately, some people bring a legal position which forces the board to counteract with a legal position. And it's instead of having the things resolved on a common sense basis, some people resort to the legal system, increasing to the expenses.
If I may, Bob Resch, if I may, let me read another paragraph within the document I handed out. The HOA board must seek ways of containing our legal costs, which are significantly out of proportion for a community of our size. We should be activating our legal committee to review suggested legal actions and to advise the board on whether or not to proceed. We have had much success in our various legal actions, and this is a credit to our current counsel. In the future, it is proposed that the legal committee take the lead in evaluating the costs, benefits, and effectiveness of our outside legal support and report their findings to the board. One member of the legal committee should be present at each board meeting rather than outside counsel.
Frank Castiglione. Well, hopefully in the future there will be smaller legal fees because the shed property has been settled. What we have still open, I believe, is the clubhouse, and whatever, no one can tell what other issues are going to come forward from the residents themselves. So I believe the future will hold lower fees.
Yes, our fees are tremendously high. Probably we spent $3.5 million in the last 5 years on legal fees. Mr. Hamburger is a very good lawyer. I made an impassioned plea to keep him on when his contract was up because we were at a very crucial point where our cases were taken away from Judge Pines and given to Judge Maya, and I wanted him to stay on the case and not get another lawyer who would have to charge us just to read voluminous amounts of paper to know what's been going on in the past. The other lawyer was a very good lawyer, and his fee was $100 an hour less. But in spite of that, I wanted to keep Hamburger on. I was very boisterous about that. Also, it isn't entirely our lawyer's fault that these amounts of hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour are charged. He's up against a sponsor that has multi-millions of dollars and has cadres of law firms, and they know how to prolong a case. There'll be rebuttal, then there's sir rebuttal, then there's sir rebuttal, and on and infinitum. And it goes on that way. Adjournments along, and it takes many years. Right now, we are in the appellate division, thank God, on the courthouse, on the clubhouse, and our lawyer has told us that we should have a decision within 30 days. I doubt that, but let's hope so.
That's not what I heard, but that's okay. It can't be 30 days. They haven't done the arguing yet. The arguing is probably not going to take place till after the summer, so then the case will be decided by the appellate division next year. But in answer to your case, Paul.
My question was the frivolous one. For instance, letters that have to be written. The board should be writing their own letters and not having the lawyer write it.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, then I'll ask you back a question. The question you want, since you always bring up the legal, that's your thing, and I know when you get up that's going to be your question. The point is, if I wrote a letter and I missed the legal point, how much is it going to cost us as a community? That's why you have a lawyer. I write the letters, the lawyer looks at it. If Joe writes a letter, the lawyer looks at it. If we need the letter written on something that's very important, we have the lawyer write it because we have to make sure it's correct. We have to make sure it's legal. It has covered all the points that we need to cover. So it's not just a matter of writing a letter of common sense. We're not attorneys, and we don't try to be attorneys. At least I don't try to be an attorney. So I go along and say we're spending it. We went down 10% this year in the legal cost from our budget. We hope to go down next year because, as Jack said, the only real major case we have left open now is really the clubhouse. When that's finished with appellate, that's going to be expensive because as soon as the argument has to be heard, you pay for the argument. You pay for everything that goes on afterwards. You pay for the appeals after that. This is the system we live in. We live in a litigious society. We can't help that. It's the community that has to stop suing itself, because that cost is not only insurance, but in legal costs too, because our lawyer has to go defend those things. We have foreclosures, so we have all this thing going on that goes on in our community. We can't possibly stop legal costs, but we can get it down tremendously once the cases are over. You got it, Paul.
Could you give the microphone to Jack? He wants to answer what he's done for his
Yes,
neighbors.
these are just a few of the things, and some of the people...
30 seconds, Jack.
Some of the people that are here that I've taken to St. Francis Hospital and picked them up at 4:30 in the morning. I've run 5 block parties the first 5 years we were here. I organized a welcoming party in the clubhouse for Phase 5 when they moved in. I have taken people, well, I said that to hospitals. I shovel cars out. I did it even though I have a bad heart, a pacemaker, and defibrillator. I did shoveling this year. I changed electrical switches. When electricians said they couldn't find the transformer and the puffet lights, there are no transformers.
Jack.
I would like to get my 30 seconds. I just do everything for the community, and I don't tell people about it.
I'm sorry, that's only 3 or 4 seconds. Okay, number 26. Number 27, that's the final one.
This board is doing a great job, except there's one very big problem that I think we all have here, is private emails that are negative that are being sent through the community.
Please put the mic closer to your
Okay.
mouth. We didn't hear what
I'm a little flustered because I'm not used to getting up in front of everybody. But I love living here, and I think that we all have to have a positive attitude going forward, and I think the private emails that are being sent out against the board, personally against each other, are not productive. And I think half of them are lies. Okay? And I want to know what each of you think about that and how you're going to go into the new HOA board and what is going to be the outcome of private emails being sent. Thank you.
She wants to know what your position is on these emails that go out that are negative to the community, or negative to the board, I should say.
Well, how am I going to stop it? I agree 100%. There's no email that should go out that's negative to the board, none, and any board member. And each board member should adhere with the rules of the Code of Ethics and Conducts of the board, and we would not have to have those letters. The only letters that I will send out if it's necessary, if I'm attacked, I will answer the attack. But most of the time I don't. You read them all and I just don't answer them because it's not productive, and I won't do it.
When I first came on the board 5 years ago, nobody was receiving any minutes via email or even to be picked up in the clubhouse. I retyped those minutes for 10 straight months, every month, to let the people know what's going on in these board meetings. You have a right to know. After the 10th set of minutes went out, it was then that the board picked up on it, and I don't have to do that anymore, but I think it's very imperative that we be transparent and let you know what's going on.
Frank Stiglione. I don't know how you can stop the emails. The lines are free and everybody could use them. The only thing I could say is that the board works very diligently and very hard to do their best in finding solutions for the community. But however, you cannot stop people from sending out emails.
I'll refer to my report. I make a comment, Bob's vision for the future of the Greens to be the most desirable and sought-after community for seniors on Long Island. One of the items that I list as fighting that's challenging that notion, is public combativeness among the HOA board members. As I said in my presentation, I'm a communicator. I have an inclusive style, an open door style, and that disputes within the board should stay within the board. That's and not be presented to the community. I also am a part owner of the General Electric Company. I own stock, and they don't send me minutes to the meetings, of their board meetings. I think the minutes of our board meetings should be complete. If the board discusses negotiating strategies with the sponsor or the town or contractors, they should be documented in the minutes of the meeting, and they should not be distributed amongst the community, or else we'll be telling the other side of a negotiator what our negotiating strategy is. However, there is an obligation to keep the community informed of what's happening. I think there has to be more effort to issue periodic reports to the community. If a new issue arises, I think there has to be an alert to the community. This has arisen. Your board is reviewing it. We've convened a committee to study it, and we'll keep you up to date with what's happening. Rather than a whole list of mundane subjects that were discussed at the board that I don't think really makes a lot of sense and really helps us understand what's happening.
As I said in my presentation, this has been, under Herb, it's been an amazing board. We all talk to each other every day. The best example I can give you is when Joe was putting pavers down for the mailboxes, and he called me over and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "It would be better if you put the mailbox in the middle of the pavers to make it handicap accessible." And it's that exchange of ideas that this board is just great at, whether it's talking with all the problems that we encounter. It's just an amazing board. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the general questions portion. We now have questions that have been raised to individual candidates. I'll start with Frank Pistiglione. There's one question out there. There's somebody with a question for Frank.
I don't know.
Okay. We'll go next to Bob Resch, who has a question for Bob. There's a gentleman back here.
Number one. Bob, you've spoken about inclusiveness, and I'm sure we all agree with you. Do you have any suggestions as to how you would promote even more inclusiveness on this board?
It's a challenge. It's been my style, managing the projects, and as I said before, multi-million and up to billion-dollar projects. I find the style of openness works, and I would press the rest of the board to be more open with each other, to decide positions within the board, okay? And once a decision is made, and everyone participates in that decision, that's the decision of the board, and that's what we present to the community. Not, he voted for this, I disputed that. I think that, however, the majority on any issue, on a preliminary vote, should give the minority an opportunity to state their case and make the best case they can and try to convince one member of the majority to switch his vote. But at the end of the voting, and the decision is reached, that's the decision of the board, and that's what's presented to the community. In this way, I think we could promote inclusiveness in the debate cycle within the board's closed-door meetings, and I would press to introduce and maintain that culture within the board.
Thank you, Bob. Next is a question for Herb Schoenfeld. Who has a question for Herb? This young lady over here.
Sorry, Herb, this was for Bob. So, this is for Bob Resch, based on your background.
No, I'm sorry. This is a question for Herb. We'll get back to Bob again. Are you asking a question for Bob or for Herb?
No, for Bob Resch.
I'll get back to you. I want to go in order so each candidate has it. I'll get back to you.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is there any questions for Herb? Okay. There is a question for Herb. Where? Please stand up.
Number two.
Hi, good evening. Nanette Cohen. This question is for Herb Schoenfeld. First, I want to thank you for your volunteering and all your efforts in working toward a better community in the Greens. As you have previously stated, you believe that the Greens community residents should come to expect what is part of the rules as written in the prospectus and the bylaws. For example, board members represent the voters in the Greens. How would you implement a more open and transparent board between fellow board members and the community so that individuals do not become labeled as whistleblowers and residents are more harmonious when they have the facts available before decisions are made to maintain respect and decorum in the community?
Okay. First thing we've done is we've put in these questions and answer nights, and we've tried to get people to come down, and that's all it is. You come down and we don't talk about anything except you ask a question, we answer it. Those have been very successful. We've had 2, we're planning another 2 for this year. We may want to have one every month. Because the only way we get the pulse of the community is from you, and if we have the question and answer, we really know what's going on. It's very difficult to have an open vote on everything we're going to do. You can't do that. That's why we were elected or appointed to the board to make those decisions. On key issues, possibly we can go to the community and ask you your opinion. But we don't really have too many of those. I mean, sewer treatment plant is obviously one, the shed area is another one, but we get our opinion as we go around. But right now, the board has to make most of their decisions because we meet once a month. We meet for 3 hours a month, and if that, I don't know if that's answering your question. I can't hear you, so you have to.
You answered one part of the question.
Okay, what's the other part?
The other part of the question is within the board and the members within the board, since each one is a representative of the voters, that should be an inclusive process going forward as president. How would you maintain that decorum within the board so that the board all the board members are on board as representatives of the voters?
Well, I don't really know. We don't have an election we're not a congressional district, so we have people get up who are willing to put their name on the line and get up and serve the community. And we hope that all of us on the board do serve everyone in the community. And I know I try, because to be continued.
All right. Next is a question for Jack Solomons.
Jack, after reading your resume, in which you claim to have been the HOA president in 2007, I did some research. I read on the internet that there was a court order in 2007 enjoining and restraining you from acting as or claiming to be a director of the HOA. And at that same time, the 4 sponsored designated directors and 3 people from the community were declared directors. I've also read the minutes of the HOA for 2007, January through September, and you were not present at any of those HOA meetings for those months. Anyone can claim anything, but that doesn't make it true. Even in your statement tonight, you claim to have been the president of the HOA. Nowhere that I know of is there any documentation supporting your claim that you served as president of the HOA.
Excuse me.
Please explain.
This is a question,
here's my question.
not a statement.
Please explain why you put this into your resume and into your statement, and are you able to provide documentation supporting your claim?
Yes, there came a time for 2 years and 7 months when I sat on the sponsor control board with Steve Kaplan, his son, their lawyer, and a person who represented the Benjamin Corporation, and we had 3 residents. We were always outvoted 4-3. bunch of courageous people, 5 or 6 of us, chipped in some money. We hired an attorney called Malcolm Tillum, who represented us on a contingency fee basis. We went to court to have Mr. Kaplan removed off the board because our bylaws say that once he sold the last unit, he is to give up control, and he did not do that. It was Justice Werner's decision that he be removed from the board and that a new election be held and to be conducted by the Honest Ballot Society from North Shore Towers in Queens. And that's exactly what happened. We had a new election with many candidates. I won that election along with other people. And as we do now, right, and according to the bylaws, as soon as we have an election, we must gather together and vote for directors. I was voted president for 5 months. Mr. Kaplan had that overturned. I have Justice Werner's decision that I can show you anytime you want, stating that Mr. Kaplan should not be on the board. There was a new change in December of 2009, I believe it was, when the Supreme Court finally threw Mr. Kaplan off the board.
Our time. All right. Next is another question for Bob Resch. Here's your chance.
Thank you. Okay, here's my question.
Hold the microphone up.
Oh, okay. I guess based on your background as being an engineer and your management background, you were selected to be on the sewer treatment committee. You mentioned something about if the county takes over the sewer treatment plant, it would cost us a lot more money. Could you just explain what that would be?
Well, the current cost to the HOA to operate the sewage treatment plant was greatly reduced to a level or somewhere in the area of $300,000 before it was $600,000. It was reduced by a great amount. And the cost for the HOA expenses is covered by each of us, depending upon the unit we live in. So nominally, the villas will cover almost as much as 50% of the cost. The quads will cover maybe 35% of the cost, and the rest will be covered by the condos. But if the county takes over the sewage treatment plant, the county will charge everybody the same amount. So that's why I said that if the county takes over the sewage treatment plant, people in the villas will be impacted by approximately $27 a year. The people in the condos will be impacted by something over $300 a year, and it was really unfair to the whole community, and that's why I made the statements. But I also want to make one other statement. We paid for the design and construction of that sewage treatment plant. It's in the cost of our prices and the cost of our houses, and I sort of think it's unfair for the county to take it over without reimbursing us for the cost. And by the way, I'm Bob Resch.
Okay. Another question for Herb Schoenfeld. Get back. Not done. Somebody have another question for Herb? Thank you.
Herb, and due to the large insurance costs that we've incurred due to Sandy, et cetera, and the general insurance for the community, how does it get quoted and purchased? And why are we paying back the $1 million that we got in a check via condominiums, 1 or 2? Basically, that's what's happened. They gave us $1 million check, and the assessment went out to all the other groups, specifically in Group 1 and Group 2, I think, and all they're doing is getting their $1 million back.
Well, the process is we have a new broker, Sterling & Sterling, and they go out and find the insurance companies to deal with. Unfortunately for us, There is one insurance company in the United States that will cover us, and that's Greater New York. And Greater New York did give us about $1 million in Sandy, which we're using and have used to fix the roofs in condos 1, 2, 4, and 5. 3 didn't have that much damage. So we were able to do that. Now, condo 1 and condo 2, the reason you're paying more because the insurance company is a business. They say, hey, we gave you $1 million, so now we're going to raise your premiums 15, 20% because we have to start getting our money back. We laid out all this money. So there's not much we can do about it. There is nobody else to quote us. We have the broker on other situations saved us 43% recently on our auto insurance. They're trying to save us money now on a different policy that they're working on, and I think we can save some money there, but that's really what the problem was. And the reason we had to do that, if we did not use the money to repair the roofs that we were paid for by the insurance company, that money that you received from the insurance company was taxable, and each condo would have had to pay tax. But you had a 5-year window. If you get your roofs done within the 5 years, it goes away and you have no tax to pay.
Okay. Another question for Jack Solomons?
Jack, the other board members, when they speak, usually use terms like, the other board members, when they speak, use terms like we, the board, committee, inclusiveness, harmony, yet when you speak or send your emails, you usually use terms like I, me. Can you explain the difference?
Well, I really couldn't hear you. I'm hard of hearing, but yes, I do use the term I because I am the one that goes out and does these things. For instance, anybody in this room, would they dress up like I'm dressed up now and attend illegal non-resident banquets? That's against the town ordinance, and we have a lawsuit against that, incidentally. And count the chairs and tables to see how many people attended, take pictures of the bride and the groom, their names, where they're from, Calcutta, India, Queens, and incidentally, that's nothing to laugh at because part of the Pines decision is that we are to collect all of the profits from those banquets, plus the fact that we are to collect the rent from the restaurant that we've owned since May 24th, 2004. Yes, I get off my rump. I spent every day for 45 days taking notes, 2.5 hours a day, of every car coming in and out of the sewer treatment plant, because finally, what a lawyer does, he serves interrogatories on Rosenberg, and in those interrogatories, he asks for every license plate and every car that comes in and out, and I had made the notes and supplied him with that. And believe it or not, we were paying for the repair of a Chrysler Imperial. We were paying for a repair of a Jaguar, and also we had a temporary sewer worker on there for $40,000 who happens to be the general manager of our clubhouse, and I never saw that man there once. There was another man for $60,000. Didn't see him either.
Okay, thank you. Another question for Bob Resch. Are there any other questions for Bob? For who?
Thank you.
Okay.
My name's Arlene Schwartz, and my question is for Bob because he's not on the board. If the shed case was won on the legal issue that the property was to be open space, some of us are confused as to why there is discussion going on among many board members to ignore that legality that is in our prospectus, or to file that, or to file in order to have the town change that legality, reverse it, so that other things can be built on that property, structures for bikes, keeping the shed, new space for possibly an HOA building. Not that decisions have been made on all those things, but there is a lot of discussion among the board going on to do those things. Many
Could you
condo
please
owners.
ask a question?
The question started with if. If the shed case is one, doesn't that make this a question?
No, it makes it a long statement, so
No,
ask the
no,
question.
no. I'm wondering Bob, what would your approach to solving this problem be? Because there are many condo owners who object to residents who expected an upgraded entrance at the north gate, that it's a well-traveled entrance and would be even more well-traveled if it were as pretty as it could be.
Thank you.
What would your approach be to help solve this problem? Or would you?
Of course I would work to solve it. Well, we could probably litigate for another 10 years, which is the straightforward way of doing things, and that's the way we've been doing it. Or we could sit down with the sponsor and see if we can work out a solution that we say is outside the box. All right? I agree that the North Gate has to be revised. We need to make it a nicer looking gate. And as a matter of fact, there has been some progress right now. But I was on the golf course last week, and I drove down an area behind the 14th green, and I found that that's where the sponsor put his Bobcat and a pickup truck and some other equipment that he moved from the North Gate. He moved back there. There's a lot of room back there. And I understand there's an issue. The sponsor went to the town way back when, years ago, and asked for permission to put a gate on Half Hollow Road so we can get to that area and use that area for storing his equipment, and the town turned him down. He doesn't have a vote in this community. We do. We have probably something over 2,000 voters here. I have proposed in my document that we have a government liaison officer. I think that if we join forces with the sponsor, can you imagine that? Cooperate with the sponsor and approach the town and request permission to put a gate on Half Hollow Road so he could get to that area. He could store all his golf course maintenance equipment, his pool maintenance equipment, all his other equipment, he could store back there in that area and clear up the shed area. Now, is it all doable? I'm not 100% sure if it's all doable, but we certainly can give it a try.
Thank you. I think I have one more question for Herb. No? Okay.
Take singing lessons.
Is that a question for me? Question for Jack?
I want to answer that question.
Okay, go ahead.
I want you to know, I want to thank the Condo 2 board for giving me a certificate for singing lessons.
Okay. Jack Solomons?
This is for Jack. I'm Mike Borsuck. Jack, you referred to a figure of $1,115,000 savings on the sewer treatment case. Is that net of legal fees, or is legal fees subtracted for that? And if you don't know how much we spent on legal fees for that, maybe someone else who was on the board, either Herb or Joe or whatever, could you clear that up for me?
Yes, legal fees were not mentioned. Richard gets a little mad at me when I ask how much certain things cost. For instance, at the last meeting, I happened to look at the financials. I usually do not. There were 5 checks in there. One was for $145. It was dated December 1st, 14. There were 2 checks dated December 1st, 14, and 2 dated December 2nd, 2014, which added up to $53,000, or approximately 1/12 of what we had budgeted to give Mr. Hamburger last year. And I asked him if that was for going out to speak to the legislators in Riverhead and also to speak to the legislators in Smithtown. And his answer was yes, and he had to look up a lot of legal law, and there was some other part of that. But that was $53,000 just to speak to the 18 legislators. I drove out there and spoke to them twice. I didn't get paid for it, but he's a lawyer, and he gets paid $360 an hour. Well, yes, wasn't it worth suing? When I
There's
picked
no
out
follow-up,
when I
please.
picked out the documents to show the board that is supposed to be dedicated to the Suffolk County Sewer District and operated and maintained by them, and apparently all the 18 legislators agreed with me, and the 5 members of the legislative board agreed with me because it was a 5-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Got a question here for Herb? Excuse me? Artie, what?
Mr. Solomons, Artie Oster, a question was put to the board in regard to emails. You used your time to answer the question talking about that you provided emails that gave minutes. However, the question I'd like to ask is, what do you think of emails that go out that are rather long-winded, a lot of verbiage, that have character assassination of other board members, that make innuendo and personal attacks on other board members? What do you think of those kind of emails?
Could you produce one of those could you produce one of those? Did you bring one of those with you? I put out facts. I put out the engineering report for H2M, who we paid $6,500 to look at the sewer treatment plant and everything he found wrong with that sewer treatment plant.
Okay, I have a gentleman who's waving in the wind here.
Herb, my name's Harvey Permit. This is not an angry question. This is not a combative question. I think the community should know the reason that you decided to take the $3,000 a month, keep the shed open for another year, rather than call in the sheriff and say, put a lock on it and let's take it down.
Okay, it wasn't $3,000 a month, but that's what it came out to be. We started higher, he started lower, and the point is, the threat to us was he's closing the golf course, which is everything that we have to do here, that we lose, win a case, that's always going to be his threat. Now, in answer to the question before, and this is part of your answer, the shed, all we would get if we won the action and followed the lawsuit, we'd have to tear the shed down. Not us, he would, and we'd wind up with a piece of property. He would have nowhere to go to run his golf course. We've talked to him about behind hole 14, he's not building another golf course. So the point is, the strategy that we came up with is to be able to sit with him and now talk on a regular basis, which we're doing, to come up with a final conclusion to keep the golf course open forever, to work out the shed situation, and who knows what else will be thrown into the mix. But that was the reason why.
Okay, I believe that concludes our question. Oh, I have one more.
I do have a question that I thought of just about 10 minutes ago. Is it at all feasible for a community of our size to self-insure, if not everything, at least some of the aspects of the outside of the greens?
Is this a question to the
question? I'm addressing it to Herb right now. Is it feasible to be self-insured as opposed to spending large sums of money with the company we're using today?
Well, probably not, because if you can tell me that we will not be sued by anyone living here, trip and fall, if we don't have to pay our claims for broken pipes that break up the walls. We just had a major catastrophe on 712 Balfour, I believe it was, and completely they had to abandon their place because they left their water was on for 3 weeks. and it wiped out the entire place. Everything collapsed. Now we're going through a major problem with that. We had another situation, and it just cost us $15,000 because a homeowner, unfortunately, drove through their garage door, ripped up the inside, but we're responsible for a lot of this stuff internally. Well, I'm just saying, this is why, if we're self-insured, it's going to cost us a bloody fortune, in my opinion, but we're taking everything under consideration and looking at it, because down the road we may have to do something different than we're doing now if we can't find another company that'll bid against Greater New York. Because right now we're captured. We have no choice to do it. But I think down the road it will be very expensive for us. I really do.